Thank you so much for the introduction. As mentioned before, my name is Truda, also known as Nicole Kwame, and I am among you today as a survivor of labor human trafficking. And I want to start off by saying, defining what human trafficking is according to me. Human trafficking is when an individual or a group of people are forced against their will to do something. And many of you have mentioned before within the past, the previous presentations regarding sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And so, like I said before, mine is specifically on labor trafficking. And during the presentation, I will focus on 4 main points. And the first 3 are going to emphasize on how my life began as a victim of human trafficking. The second one is going to focus on how I got rescued, which I also titled My New Journey. And the third one is about how my life is now as a survivor. And at last, I will emphasize on 2 recommendations that I have as a survivor of human trafficking. And so I was living at a home in an open neighborhood where no one knew what was happening to me, not even my neighbors. When I was 10 years old, I was home with my mom. My father has left my mom and my 4 older sisters to raise by herself. And I was going to school at the time, and a friend of one of my aunts came to our home, and she said that she will like to take me with her and bring me to the United States for a better education and life. And at 10 years, being 10 years old, I mean, that was a great opportunity, especially being in my country, because it's just huge, I felt blessed, and I was really eager to come to America. America was the big thing. It was the land of, dreams and opportunities, and I felt really blessed to have that opportunity at the time. And my mother opposed the idea, but I said I wanted to do it. I want to come to America and go to school and have a good life. And one other reason why I decided to go with my trafficker was that she had already taken one of my older sisters with her. And my aunt and my family, they saw that she was taking really good care of my sister. And so I felt very comfortable going with her because we had evidence that she was doing exactly what she promised. And so I left home when I was 10, like I said earlier, and I moved to a country next to Ghana, which is known as Togo, where my trafficker lived. Immediately upon arriving at her home, I saw many girls in the house. It was a big house, and there were about approximately, if not 8, approximately 10 other females in the house. And at the moment, I was the youngest in the house. And in addition to that, there was, I think, a couple of adults in the house, as well as 2 children in the house. And so 4 days after arriving in Togo, I was told to sell candies outside the house. And these candies were owned by one of the adults in the house who I was introduced to as my trafficker's sister. And so I immediately started selling the candies, and before you know it, I did this for about 1.5 years. And I wasn't going to school at the time, and I didn't think it was a big deal. I'm coming to America, that's all that mattered at the time. And so within the 1.5 years, my trafficker finally began to prepare my documents for the United States. And in the preparation, I was told to learn new identities, including like fake names or new names. I played a sister of a twin, and I had a brother in the document, and I had parents in the document. During the preparation, she told me to learn things that I would say at the embassy when I go to get my visa, because they question you when you go to the embassy to get the visa. And so I complied, and I learned all the information necessary, and I went to the embassy, and I got my visa. It was the most memorable day. And not long after that, I got ready to come to the U.S., and it was me, a few other girls that were in the house, my trafficker herself, and one of the younger children that was in the house. So we all flew to the United States, and this was in 2002 in October. And upon arriving in the United States, her husband picked us up from the airport and took us to her home where my trafficker's older 2 sons and daughter also lived. So was my elder sister, because she left to the US before I came. And so when we came to the United States, I was given the duty of babysitting the younger child that came with us. And I started doing this. And what do you know? Time went by really fast, and before I knew it, it was over a year. I still wasn't going to school, and I wasn't worried. I had hoped that education will happen someday, or her promise, soon she would start making a move on that. But one day she told me to go to the African hair braiding shop to help with people in the shop and do hair. And by this time, I kind of taught myself how to do hair, so I complied with her idea, and she told me to tell the people that I was 18 years old, and at the time, I actually was not. I was 13 going to 14 years old. So I started working at the shop, and she told me to give her the money that I make, all the monies, including the tips. And I kind of knew this was the tradition because I witnessed the other girls also doing this already, so I was really obedient to her words. So braiding hair went on for a few years. I started making about $250 a week, and I was end up making about $400 a week on a payment, not including tips. So eventually, it was, I think, 3-4 years passed while I was doing this, and one day, I was home. It was my day off, actually. This kind of ties into the second point, which is how I got rescued. It was a Thursday morning around 5 to 6 a.m., and the police knocked on the door. They came in, and they held their guns at us, telling us to kneel down and not say anything, and they arrested my traffickers. And they also rescued me and the other 20 young girls that were in the situation. At the time, my trafficker herself and her husband and her older son were viewed as the 3 main players in the trafficking situation. And so they all 3 got arrested. And immediately the federal government worked with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, which coordinated a placement for me in the accompanied refugee minor program, since I didn't have any relatives in the United States to care for me. And so the police also worked with these people to find a home for me. And this home was located in Michigan. And I got this choice because I was considered a minor at the time. I was under the age of 18 years old. And so I came to Michigan, and immediately Bethany Christian Services, which is a program, which has a program in working with refugees, they started working with me. They found a foster home for me. I lived with a Dominican family. And there were many barriers, like language barriers, but we worked through it. Immediately, I started going to school, and 3 years after that, I got my high school diploma and went to college. And I'm currently, as mentioned before, pursuing my degree in nursing. My life now as a survivor is great. I have many life skills. I've been living on my own since I was 19 years old. And it's all because of the good work of Bethany Christian Services and God. Educationally, socially, mentally, and personally, I am what I am today because of Bethany Christian Services and their work, that they have done with me. I want to go ahead and tie into the 2 recommendations that I have regarding working with human trafficking, specifically in labor, or people who have been exposed to human trafficking. The first one, I think, is identifying the youth or the people in human trafficking And I want to, specifically talk about communication. For example, when I was working in the shops, there was this, it was constantly like many customers coming in, but none of them, actually took the time to have a sincere conversation with me or talk with me. So I didn't feel, like open up to tell anybody what was happening to me. And mostly pay attention to the nonverbal cues. For example, if you see a youth that when you talk to them, they look down, as many of you has mentioned before, they just have the fear, there's fear in their eyes. You can really tell. I believe that these signs are really, out there, and if you just really build a rapport relationship with them, and that will kind of start off with building trust, because one thing that we lose as the victims of trafficking is trust. We lose trust and we lose hope, and so we need to know that we can trust you to help us. And if you build a rapport relationship with the victim, that will build a foundation of trust, which can eventually lead into them revealing what's going on with them at home. Now, keep in mind that some people might not feel comfortable to reveal what's happening to them, and that's because of a natural fear of the traffickers. I had this fear. Honestly, I could have tell anybody about this, but I had the natural fear of my traffickers, so I couldn't tell them what was happening to me. And so the second one kind of ties into assisting youth in human trafficking, and I kind of want to focus on the fact that if you can do this by actively being involved, like for example, foster parents. My foster parents, they weren't African. They didn't speak much English, but they simply opened up their home for me and gave me love, and that's something that I lost in the process of being trafficked. And that simply just, it really allowed me to regain my identity, as a human, and know that I am loved, and that, I can do anything that I want, and that my past doesn't define me as define my future, pretty much. So they gave me a home to start off rebuilding myself over again. And another way is just providing funds, like Bethany Christian Services. Without them, giving me the fund that is necessary to go to school or live on my own when I moved out of the foster home, I wouldn't be here, So yeah, that's another way that you can help, and just talk to people, just talk to them. Talking is the main thing, communication. If you can consciously be present with people every single day, honestly, you will learn so much, And so, yeah, I kind of want to tie up by ending what Mr. Sorando said earlier in his comment. He said that we can be leaders. He said, be the leader and teachers among yourselves. And I think that with all of us being here today, gosh, we can really do so much by being the leaders and teachers, among ourselves. And I really like that. On top of that, somebody else shared earlier that, empowering the survivors, that's one major thing. If I can look at you in the face and know that you are empowering me, like telling me that Nicole, you are smart, you are beautiful, you can do this, you are worth it. Like, they need to hear that, because in the process of being, trafficked, we lose all of that. We lose all of that because we're so used to hearing things like, oh, you're not good enough, you're ugly. Honestly, I experienced that, and I think. Hearing the opposite of that really helped me, like through counseling as well. Many of you has already mentioned what needs to be done to, for survivors, and it's a great thing. Sister, yes, Stanka, she talked about, the religious point of view when working with human trafficking victims or survivors. And as a Christian, I think having one-on-one talk with some religious people in the church kind of helped me. Like for the first time that I felt open to talk about my situation was when one of the church members, she took me to church, and then when we came home, she parked the car and she asked me, she said, I want to hear your story. And then I told her my story, and she read a Bible verse for me, and we cried together in the car. And I guess that, close interaction broke a wall for me, and it really helped me. So I guess just religiously having talk with them one-on-one, because in groups I might be shy to talk about my problems in groups. So I think in that aspect, having one-on-one conversation with the people religiously really helps. So yeah, thank you.